Somewhere around 30,000 years ago, a man and a woman were buried together, side by side, facing each other. Their bodies arranged with deliberate care, grave goods placed around them, ochre dusted across their bones. Archaeologists found them in Russia at a site called Sungir. And when they did, the first question most people asked was the same one you're probably asking right now. Were they a couple? And behind that question is a much larger one that almost nobody thinks to ask. Did ancient humans even have marriage? Did they pair off the way we do? Did they fall in love? Did they promise things to each other? Did those promises mean anything? The answer is not what you expect, and it reaches much further back than you think. Let's start with what marriage actually is. Not the ceremony, not the legal contract, not the dress or the rings or the reception. Strip all of that away, and what you have left is a pair bond. Two individuals who commit to a sustained reproductive and social partnership, with some form of recognition from the group around them. By that definition, marriage is not uniquely human. Gibbons' pair bond, albatrosses' pair bond, some species of fish pair bond. But what makes human pair bonding distinct from every other animal on the planet is that it comes with social recognition. The group acknowledges the bond. The group enforces it. The group has opinions about it. That social layer is what separates a biological partnership from something we could call marriage. And that layer requires something most animals don't have. It requires culture. The earliest physical evidence of something resembling a formalized pair bond comes not from written records. Writing is only about 5,000 years old, but from burial patterns, skeletal analysis, and the chemical traces left in ancient bone. In 2011, researchers analyzing isotope data from skeletal remains at early farming sites in Central Europe found something striking. Women buried at these sites showed isotope signatures consistent with having grown up in a different geographic region than the men buried beside them. They had moved consistently across multiple sites, across multiple generations, from their place of birth to live with their partner's community. This is called patrilocal residence, and it is one of the oldest detectable patterns of human social organization we have found. It suggests not just pair bonding, but a structured social system around it. Rules, expectations, a framework that determined who went where and why. That framework is at least 4,500 years old at these sites, but the behavior it reflects almost certainly predates the farming revolution entirely. To find the deeper roots, you have to go further back, past farming, past permanent settlements, into the world of the hunter-gatherer. For most of human evolutionary history, roughly 95% of it, our ancestors lived in small, mobile bands, typically 20 to 50 individuals. They moved with the seasons, following food. They had no property in the modern sense, no land to inherit, no wealth to consolidate through strategic marriage. So why would they pair bond at all? The evolutionary answer is brutal in its simplicity. Human infants are the most helpless offspring of any primate on Earth. A newborn chimpanzee can cling to its mother within hours. A human infant cannot support its own head for months, cannot walk for a year, cannot feed itself for years after that. This is a direct consequence of our enlarged brains. Human heads are so large relative to the birth canal that evolution made a compromise. Human babies are born effectively premature before the skull has fully developed, so that they can exit the birth canal at all. The result is an infant that requires an extraordinary investment of care over an extraordinarily long period. One parent cannot reliably do this alone, not in an environment with real predators, real scarcity, and no hospitals. Pair bonding, in evolutionary terms, is a survival strategy for the offspring.
The father who stayed, who brought food, who provided protection, who invested in the child, was the father whose children were more likely to survive. And those children carried forward whatever behavioral and psychological tendencies made their father stay. Over hundreds of thousands of years, those tendencies were selected for. The capacity for attachment, the neurological reward of sustained partnership, the pain of separation and loss. Your ability to fall in love is an evolutionary inheritance. It was built by hundreds of thousands of years of children dying when their fathers left. But here is where it gets complicated. Because while the evolutionary pressure toward pair bonding is clear, the evidence from hunter-gatherer societies is far messier than a simple story of ancient monogamy. Anthropologist Helen Fisher at Rutgers University has spent decades studying the biology and anthropology of human romantic attachment. Her conclusion is that humans are not naturally monogamous in the strict sense. We are, she argues, what she calls serial monogamists. We form intense pair bonds, we invest deeply in those bonds, and then, with significant frequency, those bonds dissolve and we form new ones. The cross-cultural data supports this. Divorce, or its functional equivalent in societies without formal marriage, is nearly universal, and it peaks across many different cultures at around the 4th year of partnership. Long enough, Fisher argues, to get a child through its most vulnerable infancy. Then, the bond weakens. This pattern is not a modern failure. It is not the result of Hollywood romance or declining values or easy divorce laws. It is ancient. It shows up in the data of the simplest societies on Earth. It may be written into the basic architecture of human attachment. So what did ancient marriage actually look like? The honest answer is that it varied enormously, and the variation itself tells you something important. Among the Kung San of the Kalahari, one of the most studied hunter-gatherer groups on Earth, and one of the closest living windows we have into ancestral human social life, marriage exists. It is recognized by the community. It involves gift exchange between families. It carries obligations. But it is also relatively easily dissolved, particularly in early years, and remarriage is common and accepted. Among the Mosuo people of southwestern China, a group that has maintained a matrilineal social structure for centuries, there's no institution of marriage in the traditional sense at all. Men and women form walking marriages, relationships conducted largely at night, without cohabitation, without shared economic life. Children are raised in the mother's household by her brothers. Among many early agricultural societies, marriage was primarily an economic and political institution, a mechanism for consolidating land, alliances, and labor. Love, if it existed, was secondary, often irrelevant. The Romans had multiple categories of legal union with different rights and obligations. Ancient Mesopotamian tablets record marriage contracts negotiated like business agreements, with clauses for dissolution and property division that would not look out of place in a modern legal document. None of these look like what most people today picture when they hear the word marriage, and none of them look like each other. What they share across every culture, across every era, including the hunter-gatherer societies that most closely reflect our ancestral condition, is the social layer. The group knows. The group has roles. The union exists not just between two people,
but between two people and the community that surrounds them. That is the constant. Everything else, monogamy or polygamy, permanent or dissoluble, romantic or contractual, patrilocal or matrilocal, varies by environment, by economy, by ecology, by the specific survival pressures a given group faced.
Marriage is not a universal human institution in its specific form, but the impulse that underlies it, to formalize, to socially recognize, to build a structured framework around the pair bond, that appears to be universal and very old.
Back to Sungir. The two individuals buried side by side, facing each other, with ochre on their bones. Were they a couple? Genetic analysis published in 2017 showed that they were not closely related. They were not siblings. They were not parent and child. A man and a woman, buried together with deliberate ceremony 30,000 years ago. The researchers could not prove they were a bonded pair. Science rarely can across that distance of time. But the deliberateness of the burial, the care, the placement, it suggests that whoever arranged those bodies believed the two people belonged together. That belief that two people can belong to each other, that the fact of their belonging deserves to be marked, witnessed, and remembered, is at least 30,000 years old, possibly much older. The ceremony changes. The legal structure changes. The economic terms change. The expectations around love and fidelity and duration change with every culture and every era. But the core impulse, to look at another person and say, in whatever language exists at the time, this one is mine, and I am theirs, and we want the world to know it. That has been human for longer than we can measure.